At She Can, we tell women's stories. We lead with our stories to bring about cultural change. And I'm really excited to talk to Lucy Monaghan today. Lucy, you are a human rights activist from Belfast in Northern Ireland. You're part of the BBC 100 Women Most Inspiring Women's list. You have had a very difficult experience in 2015, and you have ever since been campaigning for change. You were a participant in the Gillen review that led to changes in the law. Tell us more about your story and your experience.
Hi, Stephanie. Thank you so much for having me on She Can. It's an absolute honor. Um, so yes, my name's Lucy. I'm a human rights activist from Belfast, and I basically got into human rights. It's not something I woke up one day and thought I would like to go into this area of expertise. But it is something I was always interested in from I was a child. Um, Unfortunately, I had an incident in my normal life, in my normal daily life, that a lot of people can succumb to and become a victim of trauma. And to be honest, I was a victim of trauma, and I went in and out of coping mechanisms. And then I finally found a purpose in amongst suffering within the trauma. And the purpose then took me on a challenging road to campaign for the law, and try and get things changed so that victims had more of a confidence in the legal system, and there was more of a clear, concise layout for sentencing, conviction rates, imprisonment rates. And yeah, that got me into that area, which then led me down a road of helping a lot of victims, which has brought me, I've nearly done a U-turn. It's brought me background, and I'm now studying psychotherapy to work hands-on with people that have experienced all types of trauma, in helping them get better. So that's really how I got there, but I don't know how much you would like me to go into for you or tell you basically, section by section.
Yes, Lucy, you're so kind. So I just feel the more honest and vulnerable you can be, the better, because we all know that women aren't safe. Women aren't safe, girls and women aren't safe when they walk home alone at night, even during the day in many areas of our cities. So I would love for you to tell us what happened in 2015 and what then led you to do a lot of human rights, purposes and jobs, and now to studying psychotherapy, where you're going to help victims of trauma and what you experienced, the severe trauma.
Yes, okay, no problem, Stephanie. Well, as you know, I live in Ireland, and Ireland is at the moment, the last time I checked the statistics, Ireland was the second most favoritist country for women not leaving the house due to fear.
Wow.
Um, and that's just fear against violence coming from the opposite gender.
Mm.
When I read that I was completely mind blown, Stephanie. And I just thought, no, I need to do something about this. So basically, I had quite a normal life. Went to school, went to a convent school, and went to university, opened a business. I was doing really well in life. I was blessed, I was healthy. Um, I had two long relationships, which I think is quite important to mention because I think if I had been a single girl in my case, things probably would have been a lot worse. But I had a partner, one partner for 7 years, another one for 4 years. And I went to a hairdressing appointment one day, on a Friday morning in the middle of spring, in the really busy part of the city centre of town. And unfortunately, my coffee, there was drugs part of my coffee. So I was taken away for 8 hours and I was physically abused and sexually abused twice. Um, so I came home that evening. I was put into a taxi to come home and my contact lenses had been taken out. I hadn't a clue where I was. I was covered in bruises. And I remember I don't remember much of the day. I remember getting into bed, into my own bed that night. And when I woke up the next morning, I went to the bathroom and I had bleach beside the bath. And, there was towels and stuff there that were wet. So I'd had a shower when I come in or a bath and I'd scrubbed with bleach. And I was sort of thinking, oh, something's wrong. I knew by looking at myself in the mirror, that I was black and blue, and I still couldn't really work out what had happened. And I went into work, and it was only once I don't know why I went into work. I think I was on autopilot,
Mm.
and I think I was speaking to a customer maybe 20 minutes or so, and I just dropped to my knees in tears. And I think it finally hit me what had happened. Your
Mm.
memory comes back in flashbacks.
Mm.
So I did everything that was required of me legally. I followed the law completely. I rang my parents, straight away, one of my parents. I rang my mum. I'm really close to my mum, and I confided in her. She told me straight away, you must go to the police. So I picked up the phone. I didn't, if I'm honest, Stephen, I didn't actually want to go to the police in the beginning
Yeah.
because I sort of had an idea as a woman, just through watching movies, watching TV, hearing friends' stories, hearing family members, past histories. Everyone you meet in life has experienced some form, unfortunately, of abuse, and it is usually from the opposite gender. And things don't usually go the way they're meant to. They're not really in favor of the victim
Yeah.
in 90% of the cases, as you know yourself. So I didn't really want to go forward. I got my friend to call the hospital and we thought we'll ask the hospital, can they run a drug test? And the hospital asked what it had to do with. My friend explained, and I think the hospital contacted the police.
Mm.
So the police came and got me, went and did my interview. I had a lovely policeman to begin with. He was brilliant. He had daughters my age, was very empathetic and very concerned. And that was a good experience. And then I had to be taken to a sexual assault referral center and everything sort of my opinion on the system, that's when it probably first began to change. I was
Mm.
given a detective who wasn't really that empathetic. The doctor that I had to see, who analyzes you physically and investigates your body for abrasions, cuts, bruises, any type of violation. She was used to dealing with corpse bodies. So they sent her in to me, which I was alive for a start, and obviously I've been through. Well, when you think about it, it's the worst crime you can live through because you've murder, you've manslaughter, and then you've rape. Rape is the only one out of those three you live through, Stephanie. So it is one of the worst things you can go through alive. And I had a doctor flinging me about the bed, like a wet sock, just like it was a slab of meat. It was horrendous. And I remember her saying things, she was looking at some of my bruises and she said, well, this is typical of rough intercourse, and I was sort of standing there and I was like, but this wasn't intercourse. I was unconscious, I
Yeah.
just assumed everyone would believe me
Mm.
and listen to what I was saying and
Mm.
like go forth with the correct proceedings that I thought would have happened in our society. However, I was sent home that night and my clothes were taken off me. My phone was taken off me for months at one point. His phone was never taken or anything like that. I don't even think his clothes were taken. But I was sent home and the what I would like to call the beginning of just a treacherous journey. The police told me they had arrested the offender and that he was out on bail and that the case was being sent to the local authorities for prosecution, which is the Public Prosecution Service. And I would hear in due time. I think by that stage, that was maybe May. And about 5 weeks later, I found out they weren't prosecuting him. And their reasons were they couldn't prove that consent hadn't taken place. Um, and that I was most likely in a state where I consented and do not remember. So I rang the director of prosecutions. I think I actually had to pretend I was somebody else to get through to him on the phone. I think I rang a number of times. Um, and I remember saying to him, like, what does this mean? And he said, oh, well, you were intoxicated when you turned up to your hairdressing appointment. And I said, what? Like, that's impossible. I don't even really drink. Like, I'd have one or two if I was going to an event and maybe three. But, I'm not a drinker. That's impossible. This was 10 o'clock in the morning. I was going to work afterwards. My dad dropped me to the appointment. I just said, this is incredibly wrong. This is not true. Um, so right up until 2018, I had to rely on the prosecution's decision that I was intoxicated and came on to this older foreign man, and that I initiated things. They didn't take into account that I had a partner at the time. They didn't, take into account that, there was no earlier conversation with this individual. There was no flirting. There was nothing that inclines any type of unwanted attention or anything at all like that. So I thought my case is clear cut. The police are going to see this, they're going to do something, the authorities are going to follow their protocol, they'll arrest him, they'll put him in jail, and they'll throw away the case. And Stephanie, I honestly believe that this would happen, and I think my mum and dad thought this would happen. Um, so when I found out he wasn't being prosecuted and spoke to the director, I remember thinking, okay, these people think I'm drunk. They did a toxicology report and I haven't seen the results. In 2018, they sent me my results, Stephanie, and it said 0% alcohol, which I was delighted to see. Obviously, I knew that was the truth, but to see it in black and white, you almost feel like you need it in black and white in those situations to be believed because you're a woman. And, we do live in a patriarchy and men do tend to have the upper hand. And I just thought if I had this piece of paper, this would be my biggest support and my biggest evidential witness. Um, and furthermore, the same toxicology report revealed that I was drugged with three different hypnotizing sedative drugs. They were, I think one of them was oxazepam, one was temazepam, and something else. There was just a cocktail of sedatives. Um, so really, I'm lucky that I didn't overdose or anything, and that I was just drugged and made unconscious, and it wasn't a more permanent state. I'm lucky that way. Um, and really, once I got that toxicology report, I did a speech about 2 weeks later, because I was infuriated. I was so angry. I was full of resentment. Um, I was I was so sad and I felt so disappointed because I'd had so much faith in a system that I thought was going to punish the other person for hurting me so much and for breaking the law and committing such a heinous violation. I thought this is going to happen and this will go in my favor and everything will work out fine. And when I got those results, I thought, flipping, this is great. I've got my proof. I can go and speak public. Um, so I dropped my anonymity, which not many victims do, which meant everybody everywhere I spoke would know who I was and what happened to me. I think I probably made that decision very hastily. I I went and did a speech and I was so nervous, I actually fainted off, I fell off the chair before we started recording because I was so terrified. It was the first time I was speaking out about it, and a lot of threats had been made against me and my family when I first spoke out. This is actually something I've never talked about. But there were a lot of threats made towards my parents and myself and other my siblings, other family members. And I was warned to drop the case numerous times. At one stage, I was actually told if I didn't drop it, I would have acid thrown in my face one day, which made me sit in probably for maybe the guts of 2 to 3 years. So it was a really probably the hardest thing I've done carrying on the fight and having the support of my family and friends behind me. But given the opportunity to do the speech that day, it involved a group that support women and gender inequality. And I spoke that day with my results. I had a copy of my toxicology results in front of me. Um, and I'd written all my own law work and couldn't get anybody to legally represent me. I had every door shut in my face and told time and time again, solicitors didn't have time. The burden of proof was too high to prove. So I owned a business at the time. I quit my business. I took out a library card and I rented, I don't know how many books. I don't know how many books I downloaded and printed off. And I sat for the guts of those 2 to 3 years where I was in the house studying every law on rape and sexual assault, um, every law on human rights, especially, sorry, the article for European human rights. I went through that act with a fine-tooth comb, and I came to the decision that they had broke my human rights on a number of issues. Things as small as not arresting him, tell me he was arrested and he wasn't arrested. I think they left out 17 pages of my interview when they interviewed the perpetrator. So he was never actually interviewed on sexually assaulting me because those pages were missing from the transcript. Oh, there were many things. I think at one stage the police got me over to give me my telephone back, and there was no rooms available, so they asked me to speak to them outside. And they were standing in a little shelter, and it was raining. And I asked, could I come in? And they said, no, you need to stand outside. And this is as all the cars were coming into the police station. And he just spoke to me about my rape case. And I remember standing in the rain thinking, I want the ground to open up. I just want to drop into a hole in the ground. Like, am I this worthless? That something that's turned my world upside down, you can just speak to me about in front of people passing by. Even the way they give me my clothes back, that your dirty clothes from when the incident happened. And it's something maybe other people aren't mindful of, but your body is a crime scene then, and you carry that with you, Stephanie, everywhere you go. And those wee small things can be, like you said earlier, triggers to a certain degree. And I just remember going home one night and thinking, this is not effing okay. This is not okay. You know, it's just not okay. And I got so frustrated that all of the studying then led me to start writing down and thinking, okay, what did I want to happen? What should have happened? What could they have done? What more protection was I entitled to? On how many levels have they violated my human rights? And I wrote my own affidavit, um, which sounds really crazy now. Me saying it to someone else to think I did that sounds quite estranged from me. But I wrote that and I got a great solicitor on board. I now have Kevin Winters, who is the best human rights solicitor in all of Ireland and probably in the UK as well. He's fantastic. And he took over my case, which took a lot of workload off me. I am still really heavily involved in my case and I still do a lot of work on a weekly basis because I'm still fighting. We're 9 years in and I still haven't got into a courtroom where I face my perpetrator. That hasn't happened yet. But it doesn't stop me fighting. And, it's got me to judicial review which never happens in my country. It got me to have a police investigation reopened with new investigators allocated.
Mm.
And I don't know how much you know about our country, but we had a lot of troubles and we still do the last 50 years. So having new officers allocated to a such a serious investigation is a massive thing in Northern Irish law. So and probably in British law, the whole of the UK.
Yeah.
So I made brilliant strides and that then led me to helping others that were in similar positions. It led me to winning an award, and it led me to changing my life path. It also came with a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of sickness. I now have an autoimmune disease, which I struggle with quite a lot. And at one stage, my body ran out of cortisol, your
Mm.
stress hormone. And, there's been a few times I've been that ill. Uh, Doctors have, there was one phone call where they called me and said, if you don't get over, you will die. That has been said to me, and I've went into anaphylactic shock. And sometimes I think it's the sickness and the trauma and the stress manifesting itself physically.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a number of reasons why I could be ill. But it's been a long ride. It's been a really long ride, and it's had really good ups and downs. I've had pivotal moments, and I've also had pitfalls. But yeah, it's been a learning experience, Stephanie. If there's anything you want me to go more into detail, just tell me because I'm probably jumping all over the place in the
Lucy,
story.
I feel that you have been so beautifully honest and vulnerable, and I think you are leading with your story because we all know that the system that we live in at the moment still does not believe women, does not persecute rapists or other abusers. We know that your story is sadly a very typical story. And as you said earlier, I think 90% of those cases do not get to court, which is a terrible statistic. And it is changed by women telling their stories. You lead with your example, with your story, which must be an unbelievably hard thing to do. So I'm very grateful to have this conversation because those conversations bring about change. And I do believe that we can change a cultural narrative by telling our stories. And you do that beautifully, and you've had awards for it. And I'm unbelievably proud of you for all the
Oh,
incredible achievements that you have already been able to pile on since you had this harrowing experience, which is big trauma, and you feel and live with the effects ever since. But you have also the anger and the disbelief have made you choose a purpose where you are really changing a narrative and where you're helping other women who have experienced the same thing. Sorry, what are all the ways that what is all the work that you do where you change other women's lives?
oh, I got you that time. Well, basically, it's not something I advertise, so I never put a post online or took up a specific role doing this. What happened was after once I had done my speech, it went live. Someone recorded it live and it went viral. Sorry. And once it went viral, a lot of people then got in touch, via social media. Some messages were just, great work, well done. I'm so sorry this has happened to you. Other messages were, thank you for speaking out. I would love to. I have my own story. And then other people had written messages such as, Lucy, something similar happened to me. I haven't spoken about it, and I would actually like to do something about it now after watching your video. So I just responded to a few messages and said, yes, no problem. I can tell you a bit about what I did with my own case. Maybe this can help you. And that turned into sort of then giving my number out and having two or three phone calls with a victim. And then sometimes I'd meet them. I try and meet them in a neutral place, but sometimes when, they would end up coming to my home with a family member or something, and I would speak to them, get to know them, and then start going to court with them. So I just gave up everything that I was doing and my job, which I was giving up anyway because I had to work on my own case. So what was another day or so helping someone else? And it was giving me more information, educating me on different areas and specifics of the legal system that I had yet to encounter. So it was quite educational. And rewarding for both parties in that way. Although obviously you have the victim reliving their trauma, which is the hard part.
Yeah.
I'm there and can empathize with them. I've been through it. So I was allocating them a solicitor. I was then trying to get them into therapy so that they could speak to someone. The way the legal system is over here, you're actually denied a therapist while you are a rape victim. You're not allowed to speak about the case, which is crazy, which means you're not
That's,
entitled to
yeah.
any type of talking therapy. Can be used heavily against you on the side of the defense. So I was getting them a solicitor that I trusted, that I knew that had represented other victims and that had represented offenders, because I knew those representing the offenders, solicitors and barristers alike, would be great at defending a victim.
Mm.
And a victim of a rape case isn't entitled to a solicitor. They don't even know things. There was many days, Stephanie, I was sitting in court with them and the case was about to be dismissed, and the victim hadn't even entered a victim impact statement, which is the victim's chance to allow the courtroom to hear what they've experienced, how it's changed their life,
Mm.
how psychologically, emotionally, and mentally damaged they are from experiencing such a harrowing crime. So I was able to do those things, and then two people, four people turned into 10 people, 20 people, and then that kept going up. And then there were different organizations wanted me to go and give a little prep speech to some people, and then that turned into, I have no idea how this happened, but that turned into me speaking at our government, which is Stormont. So you
Mm.
would have Westminster in Britain, and then you would have Stormont here.
Yeah.
And I spoke there to educate politicians on conviction rates and imprisonment, and the lack of empathy, just the lack of education within the whole system as well. I thought by coming out and changing laws and doing this, that, and the other, that it was going to change things, Stephanie. And at the end of the day, when I thought about it, 2, 3 years in, I thought, well, the jury are 12 members of society. It's those people, it's their minds we need to
Yeah.
change. And
Yeah.
that's just society. That's not a person wearing a wig and a cloak, in a fancy courtroom. They're you and me.
Yeah.
They're the average person. And that's where the problem lies. It's not in those rooms, it's conversations that I continuously have, and educating politicians, educating the police, which I did as well. I spoke at their conferences. I spoke to journalists. It wasn't really changing anything. And although I've done great change at the same time, it's such a small step in society, and that step needs to be expanded, because like you said earlier, it's it's not even a local problem or a regional problem,
Mm.
it's a
That's a
global
global problem.
crisis.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely, and I think we have to become very comfortable in having those uncomfortable conversations, and we have to be able to say that this is crimes by men against women, and we need men to be our allies, to denounce that, to stand by us, to change the system, to hear the victims, to trust the victims, to believe the victims, to change the justice system so that all the offenders are prosecuted, that there is every single time a way to bring justice to a victim, which is a really important part of a healing process. And so there is a lot of change to be made. I'm wondering, Lucy, what tips would you have to a woman who has experienced something similar? What would you say to them?
that's a good question. That's a very good question. I remember being asked something similar a right number of years ago. I think the first thing I said as an answer was go to the police, follow the legal system. And I think I would still say that, if I'm honest, hands on my heart, because I believe the more that is reported, the more awareness there is. And society can then make a change the more people talk about it. I do say to every victim I meet, though, look, I'm not going to lie to you, this person is most likely not going to go to jail.
Mm,
And that's probably when I get a shocking response.
mm.
Um, but statistically, they're not going to jail. They probably aren't even going to be convicted. But if you know that from the outset, um, and you have faith and hope, and you just pray for the worst and hope for the best, hope for the best and expect the worst, then you won't be disappointed. Um, but to never give up on themselves and to always trust their gut, and no matter if everyone else is telling them they're wrong, if they believe in them, to never stop, never lose that fire in yourself. That will keep you going. On days when you haven't slept or you haven't eaten or you haven't washed or you don't want to leave the house, you've been crying for 2 days, you're curled up in a ball in bed, is to just not give up that little inner voice inside. At the end of the day, it's Mother Nature. It's not Father Nature, is it? The world should be run by women.
Yeah. Lucy, so what is the vision for your future? You're obviously training to be a psychotherapist, to bring about more change, to heal yourself. What is your vision for your future?
Um, I've really actually enjoyed a lot of the work that came off the back of my campaign. So I've actually really enjoyed doing the speeches and presenting things, and working with others because I love communication. And that's really helped me in my recovery mentally, psychologically. That's helped me recover massively and deal with trauma. But I've realized there's more than one way of getting better, and I think that it's taken me down that type of route. So I'm the type of person now that spends a lot of time at the beach, that puts my mental health before anything else, including financial worries, car worries, anything like that. My mental health now comes first. So I set aside self-care, um, and doing good things for my body, creatively, movement, how that processes trauma. So it got me into studying such different areas, of dance, of nutrition, um, all those different types of areas. But psychotherapy and law is where my heart lies. And I'm really big into human rights, and I don't see myself ever leaving that alone, Stephanie, if I'm honest. So my goal would probably be to make more change. Um, I might regret saying that, but I would love to make more of an imprint, more change for us.
Lucy, I'm so grateful for you to tell your story so vulnerably and so beautifully and so impactful, and for all the work you do, the incredible level of service that you put before your trauma and to help others. So I'm so grateful for your story and your time and
Oh,
for leading with your story to bring about change.
thank you, Stephanie. I've really enjoyed it. I'm actually so interested in She Can. I wasn't aware of you guys but before we spoke. So you guys are doing an incredible mission in the world. You guys really are. And if there's anything I can help out with or take part in, I would absolutely love to, because you're one of the only organizations I've found that center on aiding women in today's world, educationally and just to help them prosper, really.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lucy.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you.